Part 9. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mocnu. Chapter 81. In the building on the verge of collapse, Mu slowly stood up and stretched. The black air in the floor was obviously diluted a lot, and now it all surrounded Mu, like a ball of black fog. It must be said that as one of the 9 ghost generals, Najia is indeed very powerful, and even Ji Yufeng, who has powerful superpowers, may not be his opponent. It's a pity that Najia faced an even more powerful opponent, the Flame Demon Lord. The whole battle was without any suspense. Najia's soul was finally completely swallowed and absorbed by Mu, and turned into a part of Mu's superpowers. Mu stood up, and the ice mist in front of him gradually condensed into an ice mirror. Mu looked at the ice mirror and saw that the figure in front of the mirror was wearing a red-faced and fanged demon mask, tall and strong, and a pair of wide black wings behind him were very eye-catching. In this way, Mu is more like a dead messenger who walked out of hell. It's a pity that the wings are too big, and they broke the windbreaker. Mu was still defending his black windbreaker, which was his weapon for showing off. Mu thought about it, and simply took off the broken windbreaker and wrapped it around his waist. He was shirtless, revealing his well-defined abdominal muscles, and his fair skin revealed an extreme sense of masculinity and dominance. "It's much more pleasing to the eye this way," Mu commented with satisfaction. Then, Mu's mind moved, and he mobilized the domineering aura that belonged to the Flame Demon Lord. When it comes to the darkness deep in his heart, there are not many people who can compare with the bloodthirsty and brutal Flame Demon Lord. Mu's body began to emanate a powerful aura that was different from the energy. Amid the black air, groups of ink-like figures emerged from the shadows under Mu's feet. The ink stains fell on the ground like spots of ink, and then suddenly grew larger, turning into soldiers wearing black ninja costumes. Mu keenly sensed that there was a familiar supernatural fluctuation in the bodies of these ninja soldiers, which was the devouring ability that existed in their own origins. Sensing this abnormality of the ninja group, Mu's face was covered with an excited smile. The devouring ability is actually combined with the Black Shadow Army. Mu looked up and saw that the entire collapsed floor was full of dark shadow ninjas. A pair of red eyes looked at Mu, and no expression could be seen under the black mask. Mu suddenly released an extreme black gas, filled with the tyranny and violence of the flame demon. All the ninja soldiers instantly knelt on one knee, lowered their heads respectfully, like loyal believers worshipping the sacred. Mu, who was worshipped by many shadow ninjas, did not even look at his subordinates on the ground. A strong sense of evil interest rose in my heart. These soldiers of the Shadow Kingdom actually copied part of my devouring ability. Things are starting to get interesting. At this moment, the building finally couldn't hold up the trend of collapse and began to collapse violently. In the center of the broken club building, a towering tree was slowly climbing up. Outside the building, a fierce battle between humans and zombies was in full swing. The only dozens of people left on the human team surrounded the military vehicle and tried their best to resist the wave of zombies. Fortunately, the high-level zombies in this area have been caught in the club building, and the zombies besieging everyone at this time are not. They were all relatively low level. But the zombies were too numerous to resist, and they came like a rolling wave. After one wave was defeated, the next wave came. The blackheads made the A-level awakeners in the team helpless. What's more, behind them, there was a terrifying existence that was several times more dangerous than the zombie tide. Mu. Wei Linger in the team seemed a little distracted as she resisted the zombies that rushed over. She was more worried about Mu, who stayed alone in the building to fight Su Feng. Wei Linger couldn't help but look at the direction of the collapsed building in the distance. There was a mutant vine tree that was rushing straight into the sky, and the white figure shuttled back and forth on this huge plant, like a white lightning bolt. This white figure was the white god of death, Ji Yufeng. Ji Yufeng used his full power to shuttle through space, and the two laser swords in his hands also rushed forward with lightning. Every time Ji Yufeng appeared, the vines and branches of the mutant vines would be cut off and stabbed by the sharp laser swords. But strangely, the gap after being cut off actually spurted out bright red blood, and the broken branches quickly grew back, and the opposite was the vine tentacles that were several times thicker than before. There was a strange vertical eye on the trunk of the mutant vine tree. At this moment, the vertical eye was full of anger, and it was obvious that it had been annoyed by Ji Yufeng's continuous attacks. Ji Yufeng was also under great pressure when dealing with the mutant vine tree. This mutant vine tree was obviously a new heretic, and had no combat experience, but its huge body and thick vine tentacles that could be manipulated like arms were enough to make Ji Yufeng feel exhausted. Hundreds and thousands of vines as thick as giant pythons were pulled in all directions, and they were also covered with spikes containing blood toxins. For ordinary people, it was no less than being attacked by hundreds of missiles. Only a space awakener with super speed like Ji Yufeng could rely on his flexible body to compete with it. But the recovery ability of this vine monster is also amazing. If you cut off a vine, several more will grow immediately. It is really difficult to deal with. Ji Yufeng's figure kept shuttling in the white vortex, and from a distance, there were dozens of white vortices around the giant vine. I don't know how long Yufeng can hold on. The middle-aged man of the law enforcement team looked at Ji Yufeng, who was flying in the air, and his eyes showed worry. He knew very well how much side effects the capsule-like medicine that Ji Yufeng had just taken had on his body, and he could also feel the strong supernatural fluctuations from the mutant vine. Looking back at the zombie tide in front of them, they might really be wiped out here. Although the people present did not express anything, they had already felt despair in their hearts. But at this moment, an accident happened. A group of black-clothed figures wearing masks suddenly appeared around. An awakened person was surrounded by several zombies. Just when he was in despair, several black-clad ninjas descended from the sky like divine soldiers, holding swords and long sticks and hunting down all the zombies. The awakened thought that these black-clad men were comrades sent by the Yuhei base to help them, and they were about to thank them with a look of joy on their faces. "Thank you." But the next second, his neck was suddenly pierced by a narrow samurai sword, and blood spurted out. Corresponding to this were the indifferent ninja soldiers and many awakened people with horror in their eyes. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 82. All the awakened people fighting in the field were stunned when they saw this scene. They never thought that the help they thought of would become the ruthless executioner who harvested their lives. But the soldiers of the Black Shadow Corps would not give them any time to react. The Black Shadows drove the weapons in their hands to ruthlessly harvest and kill all the zombies and awakened people around them. Whether it was the zombie heretics or the human survivors, they were attacked and killed indiscriminately by the swords in their hands. The battlefield was full of Black Shadow killers wearing ninja costumes. For a while, the roar of zombies and the wailing of humans being assassinated spread throughout the field. What is going on? The remaining awakened people gathered together. At this moment, their biggest crisis was not the wave-like corpse tide, but these weird ninjas shuttling through the zombie battlefield. Are they from the heterogeneous church? Someone was puzzled by this group of unidentified black-clothed ninjas. The middle-aged man in the law enforcement team showed a solemn expression and shook his head. "I have never seen a foreign believer dressed like this. The foreign believers have always been dressed in robes of various colors and hoods. But this group of black-clothed figures are dressed in uniform ninja costumes, with masks covering their entire faces, revealing only a pair of scarlet eyes, which is very different from the believers of the foreign believers." Chunan, who was dressed in a flashy outfit, was manipulating a row of rose petals at this moment, and the soft petals were like sharp blades in his hands. He flicked his fingers and the petals suddenly turned into a fierce hidden weapon, and the necks of several soldiers of the Black Shadow Corps were instantly cut. But the weird thing happened again, and several ninjas exploded into a group of ink-like black shadows out of thin air, without even a trace of blood. This scene shocked everyone's eyes. What the hell are they? The fat man tilted his stiff neck and looked at the others with a look of horror. These ninja soldiers not only look like ghosts, but also die in a way that is not human, which makes the fat man who is most afraid of these ghosts shudder. No one answered the fat man's question, because everyone suddenly realized that the number of these black-clothed ninjas who look like ghosts is increasing. These ninjas follow like shadows, and appear from behind many zombies and survivors in the next second, swinging down the cold blades in their hands. Although the level of these suddenly appearing black-clothed ninjas is generally not high, only sea level. But they can't stand the large number of ninjas comparable to the zombie group, and their speed is extremely fast, which is several times that of ordinary zombies, and they obviously have rich combat experience. Every black-clothed ninja is like a professionally trained Dark Knight killer. All the humans who have survived to this day are the strong ones among the awakened ones and the elites of the law enforcement team, but they are also in a difficult battle when they encounter this group of elusive ninja killers. A leopard man-shaped mutant awakener had just crushed the head of a zombie when a black-clad ninja attacked from behind. Looking for death. The leopard man had a fierce look on his face, and he turned around and clapped his hands. The black-clad ninja immediately exploded into an ink-like black shadow and disappeared without a trace. The leopard man looked at the empty front in shock, and looked at his palm in disbelief. There was not a trace of blood. But just as he was stunned, another black-clad ninja suddenly appeared from behind the leopard man, holding a short knife in his hand. Swoosh! Blood splattered, the leopard man covered his bleeding neck, his eyes full of horror, and his tall body slowly fell down. But then, a scene that shocked many awakeners happened. After the leopard man fell, the black-clad ninja behind him caught his body. The black-clad ninja opened his palm to hold the leopard man's face, and an invisible devouring force was running. The superpowers in the leopard man were absorbed and transferred to the black ninja's body. The leopard man's face gradually turned into a normal person's. The black ninja's body and face also changed rapidly. Dark mane, spotted cheetah head, inverted pupils, tall and strong body. Except for the color is still black, the body of this black ninja is exactly the same as the leopard man who just died. The black ninja who turned into a leopard man instantly joined the trench on the side. Agile speed, fierce power, huge front claws, the power displayed by the ninja turned black shadow leopard man is exactly the same as the dead awakened leopard man. Similar events continue to occur on the battlefield, and countless mutant zombies and careless awakeners are assassinated and destroyed by the ghostly black ninjas. Their superpowers are also swallowed and transformed by these black ninjas. These black-clad ninjas can absorb the abilities of dead awakened ones. How could everyone not see the clues at this time? The human survivors looked vigilantly at the many black-clad ninjas attacking silently around them. In their hearts, these black-clad ninjas have been marked as monsters that are more terrifying than zombie heretics. They can absorb the abilities of other awakened ones. How terrifying is this? At the same time, Ji Yufeng, who was fighting with a huge mutant vine tree in the distance, was also attacked by black-clad ninjas. Ji Yufeng had just cut off a few of the attacking vine tentacles, and his figure flashed with a white vortex. The next second he had appeared on the ground dozens of meters away. But at this moment, several black-clad ninjas suddenly appeared behind him, attacking him with long swords and long sticks in their hands. The laser sword in his hand flashed a gorgeous blue light, and the figures of several ninjas were chopped into pieces. Following it came the thick tentacles of the mutant giant vine that looked like a giant python. Feeling the whistling sound of breaking through the air beside his ears, Ji Yufeng frowned slightly, and the space under his feet shook. A white vortex flashed by, and Ji Yufeng appeared again at the branches of the vine tree. But these black-clothed ninjas seemed to be attached to his bones and followed him like a shadow, and appeared behind him again in the next second. A huge mutant vine tree is already extremely difficult to deal with, not to mention the attacks and harassment of the black-clothed ninjas that appear at any time. For a while, Ji Yufeng, who has the ability to shuttle through space, was also struggling and exhausted. Swinging the laser sword again to deal with a black-clothed ninja that appeared behind him, Ji Yufeng wiped the fine beads of sweat on his forehead. He looked down at the human survivors besieged by many zombies and black-clothed ninjas, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Can I only use that trick? Ji Yufeng gritted his teeth and endured the severe pain from taking too much medicine. A strong energy wave began to brew in his body. However, the next second, a burst of arrogant low laughter echoed in the air, clearly reaching the ears of everyone present. Chichichi. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 83. Everyone looked up and saw that the originally clear sky in the distance suddenly appeared dark black fog. The thick black fog instantly covered the sun, like a black cloud stained with ominous air, covering everyone's head. And the arrogant laughter just now came from this black cloud. When the black cloud dispersed, a sturdy human figure walked out of the dark haze. This figure was shirtless, revealing strong and solid muscle lines, wearing a hideous mask with red face and fangs, and a strange bloody scar on his chest, engraved with a six-pointed star pattern that was still dripping with blood. He was wearing a tattered black robe on his lower body, and behind him was a pair of wide black wings like devil wings. He. A shocking wave of supernatural power swept over, and everyone felt suffocated. As soon as the man stepped out of the black cloud, he brought with him an innate sense of dominance. Although he was still wearing a mask on his face, everyone could feel his wildness from his rampant laughter and deep red eyes. Who is he? This was almost the question in the minds of everyone present. They didn't understand when such a powerful existence appeared here again. Just from the energy fluctuations that suffocated them, everyone concluded that this person was at least at the same level as the White Death God Ji Yufeng. The masked man who appeared strongly was none other than Mu Qiu, who had just walked out of the ruins. Mu Qiu flapped his demon wings and stayed in the air, overlooking the humans and zombies below, and felt a slight cool tingling sensation in his chest. This was originally a tattoo of the Mark of the King. In order to avoid exposing his identity, Mu Qiu drew a hexagram pattern on his chest to cover it. Mu Qiu walked out of the black cloud with a wild smile on his face, but the first thing he saw was a black-clothed ninja hunting humans and zombies on the ground. Because of summoning these shadow core, Mu Qiu released the darkness deep in his heart through the emotions of the Flame Demon Lord, and he also got some of the Flame Demon Lord's personality. Tyranny, cruelty, tyranny, anger. The order to attack many zombies and humans now was issued by Mu Qiu. It must be said that the soldiers of the Shadow Corps are really a group of loyal subordinates. Even if their individual combat power is far less than that of the awakened ones, they are still willing to go to death. The reason for issuing these orders is also very simple, because Mu Qiu suddenly discovered that these Shadow Corps ninjas also inherited some of his devouring ability. They can obtain their superpowers by absorbing the energy of the killed heretics and awakened ones. But this skill is one time. In short, a shadow soldier can only absorb one superpower. Although it cannot be compared with his original powerful devouring superpower, it is enough to be called a magical skill. Although the strength of these ninja soldiers is only at the sea level, as long as they are given some time to develop, they will be able to become a terrifying and never betraying supernatural army. Everyone noticed that since the appearance of the masked man, the black-clothed ninjas also stopped attacking. They looked at Mu Qiu with a hint of submission. These ninjas are all his subordinates. Everyone realized that the mysterious masked man who came out of the black cloud was the leader of these black-clothed ninjas. Ji Yufeng was the first to react. He moved to avoid the attack of the mutant giant vine. The next moment, he had traveled hundreds of meters in space and arrived in front of the mysterious masked man. He actually ignored the huge mutant vines and wanted to deal with the leader of these tricky black-clothed ninjas first. Seeing the hot laser sword about to cut him, the masked man did not move at all, and uttered a wild and domineering voice, "White Death. Then let me see how powerful it is." The masked man stretched out his arms, and his red eyes were full of fierceness. He raised his hand and a black light circle appeared beside him. The whole was a bottomless darkness, as if it was a dark and uninhabited country. A huge sickle with a deep body was pulled out from the dark hole, and the sickle surrounded by black air surrounded him. With his hideous red mask and wide devil wings, the whole person looked like an undead yaksha who walked out of the depths of hell. The masked man held a huge black sickle and directly blocked Ji Yufeng's attack. The flashing laser sword and the black death sickle collided with each other, like a collision of light and darkness. "Who are you?" Ji Yufeng felt the strong repulsive force coming from the other side, and stared into the masked man's red eyes, as if he wanted to see some clues from them. Puff. Feeling the increasing pressure from the hilt, Ji Yufeng quickly drew out his weapon and flashed several meters away from the masked man. He had already consumed too much physical strength, and now he was just forcing his body to squeeze. At this moment, he had no chance of winning against the masked man. But at this moment, several heavy sounds of breaking through the air came. Several thick vines like pythons flew towards the masked man. "It's a mutant vine tree." Not far away, a vertical eye on the trunk of a huge vine tree stared at the direction of the masked man, with greed in its eyes. The subconscious feeling told it that this masked man who suddenly appeared had a great energy in his body, and it would be very beneficial to absorb his blood. The masked man turned around suddenly, and the black sickle in his hand also grew several times in an instant. When he raised his hand and slashed the knife, several tentacle-like vines were broken. Then, blood spurted out, and the wounds of the vines were billowing with black smoke. The vines with amazing recovery ability did not regenerate, and the mutant vines seemed to have cut off their fingers and wailed like babies in pain. Zzz. A pair of black demon wings behind him flapped, and the masked man soared several meters high, looking down at the ground from the air, like a demon god of hell looking down on the world. Many black-clothed ninjas on the ground also stopped their offensive steps at this time, kneeling on one knee like pilgrims. Everyone's eyes were also attracted by the powerful figure in the sky. Even the group of mindless zombies were frightened by the powerful aura emitted by the mysterious masked man, and their movements slowed down. "Who am I?" He spoke slowly, his tone still so wild and unrestrained. "Our name is Eternal Night." After speaking, the masked man pointed to the black-clad ninjas worshipping on the ground. "They are all the most loyal people of our Eternal Night Kingdom. The sky and the earth are dark, the Eternal Night Dynasty. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord." Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 84. The masked man stood in the sky, glaring at everyone, with a pair of ferocious demon wings behind him, as domineering as a god descending from the sky. Eternal Night Dynasty. The cold words reached everyone's ears. They had never heard of this strange and mysterious organization. Hey, another new cult organization. Some awakened people looked at the shirtless figure in the sky, and then thought of the strange behavior of the black-clothed ninjas, and immediately defined the Eternal Night Dynasty as a cult organization like a foreign church, and they were facing a formidable enemy. Just as many awakened people on the ground looked at the masked man in the sky with shock and vigilance, the giant mutated vine tree in the distance launched another attack. Thick vine tentacles came through the air, but the target of this attack was the masked man and Ji Yufeng in the sky. Ji Yufeng disappeared in a flash. The masked man's approach was even more vigorous. He looked at the huge vines coming towards him, and a deep laugh came from under the ferocious mask. "Chi chi chi." I saw strange black energy billowing around him, and then his knotted arms raised the huge death sickle. Everyone saw with their own eyes that the black air was actually mixed with billowing flames, all attached to the ink-black death sickle. The jet-black sickle is wrapped with billowing black flames, looking like a peerless weapon forged from the endless hell. The masked man waved the hell scythe in his hand, and a ball of black flames suddenly filled the air and directly bombarded the many vines that were attacking. Once the thick vines came into contact with the deep black flames, they began to shrink back crazily as if they were alive. But the netherworld flames of the thick black mist were like gangrene attached to the bones, wrapping around the cowering vines with a domineering force that burned everything. The 10 fingers are still connected to the heart, and these thousands of huge vines are commanded by the mutant vines like arms. Once the vines are frustrated, the mutant vines themselves also make a sharp wailing sound. The pupils of the huge vertical eyes on the tree trunk shrank suddenly, as if they had been severely injured. This newly born mutated monster acted decisively, directly cutting off the entire branch and countless huge vines. Huge branches fell to the ground, with dark and terrifying netherworld flames attached to them, burning the vines in an instant. The huge vertical eyes of the mutated vine tree looked at the masked man, and their eyes were filled with ferocious color and fierce murderous intent. Thousands of python-like vine tentacles all attacked the masked man, and the masked man fought with them without fear. At the same time, the black-clad ninjas on the ground also launched attacks on many zombie heretics and human awakeners. The Awakener of Yuhei Base. The zombie heretics in the zombie tide, the black-clad ninjas who call themselves the Eternal Night Dynasty, and the fierce battle between the three forces is about to break out. No, it's not so much a melee between the three forces, but a crazy massacre of humans and zombies by ninjas in black. There are a large number of these black-clothed ninjas who appear out of nowhere, and their strength is generally at sea level. After one ninja is killed, several more black-clothed ninjas appear in the blind spots around them, making it impossible to guard against them. Many of the awakened ones had just killed a ninja, and before they could recover, they were stabbed in the neck by the black-clothed ninja who suddenly appeared from behind. Moreover, these weird ninjas can absorb and inherit the abilities of other dead awakened people. A C-level ninja was promoted to a B-level or even A-level powerful ability user in an instant, which frightened everyone present. At this moment, Ji Yufeng no longer cared about fighting the mutated vines in the distance, but came to the surviving Yuhei team to protect the few remaining awakened ones. Ji Yufeng's white hair was seen flying, and his figure kept appearing from behind the awakened one. When the laser sword in his hand fell, countless ninjas in black turned into black shadows and disappeared. But even Ji Yufeng's speed through space could not cope with the large number of black-clothed ninjas. There were still many awakened ones who were brutally murdered, and their superpowers turned into nourishment for the evolution of black-clothed ninjas. Coupled with the fact that there is a wave of zombies approaching crazily in the surrounding area, the target of these zombie monsters is very clear, which is the human team in the Yuhei base that is surrounded by everyone. Seeing countless zombies passing by black ninjas, they actually paid no attention to these human-looking black ninjas. However, the black-clad ninja attacks humans and zombies indiscriminately, as if they are mysterious beings that do not belong to either party. Ji Yufeng shuttled through the tide of corpses, and when he saw this scene, a bright light flashed in his eyes. Looking at the human team, dozens of awakened people gradually showed signs of decline. It was also obvious that these black-clothed ninjas were targeting lone human awakened people, so they gathered around the military vehicle. All of a sudden, the sound of gunfire and artillery fire began to resound in the ruins of the city here, accompanied by the ghostly figure of the black-clothed ninja and the roar and low groan of the zombie monster. In the sky, a majestic masked man was flying with a pair of ferocious demon wings, and behind him were dense vine tentacles. An arrogant and domineering sneer came from the mask, not caring about the extreme danger behind him, but rather seeming to be teasing the towering mutated vines in the distance. Suddenly, a slight whimpering sound reached the masked man's ears. The masked man looked down and saw a mutant squirrel the size of an adult beast being bitten by several tall zombies on the ground below. The squirrel's body was already covered with scars. It had obviously been through a lot of brutal battles, and it was obvious that it could not hold on for long. Behind the mutant zombie, a girl with twin ponytails in a floral dress was looking at the giant squirrel in front of her with tears in her eyes, with a look of sadness and grief in her eyes. Guo Guo. This girl with twin ponytails was Su Wen, a member of Wei Ling'er's team. At this moment, a thin ghost-faced zombie attacked from behind Su Wen, biting the girl's delicate neck with its sharp teeth. Su Wen's pupils showed deep fear, and the girl had already anticipated the horrific scene of her neck being bitten off. Suddenly, the whistling sound of a hurricane flashed in Su Wen's ears. With a whoosh, the girl felt her body fly into the air and fall into a warm embrace. She looked up and saw a pair of dark, demon-like wide wings blowing away all the zombies around. These strong mutant zombies couldn't withstand a single blow and were slapped into a pool of blood foam. What the little girl saw when she looked up was a terrifying mask with red face and fangs. At this time, the owner of the mask also stared back at her with a pair of scarlet eyes. It turned out that it was this masked man who just lifted her up in the air and killed the mutant zombies around in an instant. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 85. The masked man looked at the delicate little girl in his arms, but he laughed grimly. He blurted out the frightening words, "The little girl is delicate and tender, and she can be a treat for this general." Su Wen stared at the ferocious masked man in front of her, as if she was scared silly. There were thousands of dark green vines like giant pythons following behind him, and the masked man was gliding rapidly in the air with the girl in his arms. As if sensing the girl's dull eyes, the masked man sneered, "Is the little girl scared silly? What this general likes to see most is the fearful expressions of you weak humans." The ferocious demon face coupled with the creepy words and laughter, this scene is enough to scare many humans. Unexpectedly, the weak girl in his arms did not cry as he expected, but said calmly, "No." The girl's watery eyes looked directly at the devil-like mask, and her eyes showed concern. When looking at Wen, Big Brother can have no violent voice in his heart. After saying that, the girl gently stroked the masked man's firm chest with her fair jade hands, and a smile appeared on her face. "Big Brother, here, it's very warm." Under the hideous mask, Mewtwo's forehead had black lines, and his face was full of embarrassment. "It's bad, I forgot that this girl also has the bug ability to listen to the hearts of all things, and he was caught by a little girl without any defense. Forget it, anyway, it's not me who is embarrassed to wear a mask." Mewtwo put himself back into the role of the masked man, turned a deaf ear to the girl's tender words, and the devil's wings accelerated to throw away the vines behind him. At this moment, the space in front of the masked man transformed by Mewtwo twisted and a white vortex emerged. Before the vortex spread, Ji Yufeng's white figure flashed over, and the laser sword in his hand also cut through the sky and hit the flying masked man. Just in time. The masked man flew low and put the girl in his hand down, holding the black sickle to block the dazzling laser sword. Wen. And Su Wen's petite figure happened to fall to the ground at this moment, and was quickly caught by Wei Ling'er below. Wei Ling'er patted her chest and said thankfully, "Fortunately, Ji Yufeng blocked the masked man, otherwise you would be in real danger." Su Wen shook her head gently, looked at the masked man in the sky, and an inexplicable ripple flashed in her clear eyes. The masked man waved the black flame of the death sickle to split Ji Yufeng's attack again. Even the white god of death could not resist the netherworld fire that burned everything, and in an instant it shuttled through space to attack other enemies. The masked man smiled wildly again, turned around and attacked the towering mutant vine tree behind him. However, this time the attack was completely free of the playful surprise just now, and there was an inexplicable violent rage in the strong offensive. The seemingly thick vine tentacles of the mutant vine tree seemed as fragile as thin paper in the hands of the masked man, and countless vines were cut off at the root when the black sickle passed. The black flame attached to the black sickle seemed to be the netherworld ghost fire from the judgment of the dead souls in the endless purgatory, which burned everything on contact, and the crazy aggressiveness seemed to burn everything in the world. As an S-level heretic, the mutant vine tree seemed to have encountered a natural enemy at this time, and its huge body became a living target in front of the masked man. The sickle in the masked man's hand cut down countless branches that tried to block his progress like harvesting straw. As a pair of wide demon wings fluttered behind him, a terrifying and domineering grin came from under the mask. He he he. The next moment, the masked man moved suddenly, holding a huge black flame sickle and flashing in front of the mutant vine tree. The huge vertical eye pupil on the branch had a trace of human fear. In the face of life-threatening danger, it desperately urged the remaining branches and vines to whip the masked man. I saw that the masked man began to burst out with black gas around him, and the black gas like haze was mixed with rolling black flames. At first glance, the tall figure in the sky seemed like a demon god descending to the world, with a monstrous power, coming towards all living beings. Those vine limbs that touched the black fog were all melted and disintegrated by the flames. The next second, the death sickle in the masked man's hand also burst out with fierce black flames like a wave of hell. As the masked man attacked the mutant vine with his sickle, the surrounding monstrous flames also swept towards the vine at the same time. A huge bombardment sounded in the ears of the people on the ground. The surviving humans looked up and saw the rolling black flames in the sky gathering and covering the branches of the towering vine. The new behemoth suddenly let out a sharp and piercing wail, which shook everyone's eardrums. In just a few breaths, this terrifying heretic cultivated by the heterogeneous church was burned to ashes. And the monstrous netherworld fire, after burning the mutant vine, wrapped around the masked man as if it had life. The terrifying powerful wave swept over, and some survivors swallowed their saliva, and the eyes of the others were full of fear and vigilance. This masked man is the final boss they have to face. At this moment, the surviving Yuhei humans have gathered together to fight against the black-clothed ninjas and the terrifying corpse tide. This made the ninja soldiers of the Black Shadow Corps unable to start for a while, so they focused their targets on the unconscious zombie monsters. At present, the Ninja Corps still has the upper hand, but these low-level zombies are being eliminated like cannon fodder, and the human camp is still resisting. Ji Yufeng is fighting at the forefront of the human camp at this time. The legendary White Death has turned pale, and his forehead is soaked with sweat. His body can no longer support such a strong overload, but at this time he must stand at the forefront of the team. The masked man came in the air, holding a black sickle, and the devil's wings surrounded the netherworld fire, which made him look more like the Hell Death who harvests lives than Ji Yufeng. Mu Qiu under the mask had a playful look on his face, and he admired Ji Yufeng's persistence and perseverance. He had seen that Ji Yufeng was already at the end of his strength, and forcing his body to fight would only make his pain increase with time. But he could appreciate it, but it was not a reason for him to let Ji Yufeng go. As for the human survivors, he could leave a group behind. After all, he still had to return to Yuhei base to enjoy life. The devil flames were raging behind him, and the masked man had already drawn his sickle. In the next second, Ji Yufeng would be beheaded. But suddenly, the masked man froze, and Mu Qiu's mind trembled under the devil mask, and his pupils shook. It was as if something was struggling to get out of his body. This was Flame Demon Lord. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 86. Since Mu Qiu's consciousness awakened in this body, he has been fighting fiercely with the original owner Flame Demon Lord for control of the body. Fortunately, he used the balancing ability of the yin and yang opposition of the talisman to suppress the violent personality of the flame demon in his body. It was like a cage, trapping the flame demon in the depths of the dark and boundless soul. But now, in order to summon these soldiers from the Shadow Kingdom, Mu-Chiu released part of the dark side of the flame demon's personality. This not only made Mu-Chiu's personality more domineering and arrogant, but also opened a gap in the cage that locked the flame demon. The flame demon lord was wrapped in chains woven from countless heart nets, and at this moment, it was making a click sound of collapse and breaking. The tall flame demon roared wildly in the cage, his red eyes were full of violence, and his body struggled to break free from the shackles, as if he would escape from the cage in the next second. Mu-Chiu's face under the mask was slightly pale, and his brows were frowned. He knew that if he continued to use the power of the black energy in the mask, the flame demon would be completely liberated from his mind in a short time. By then, Mu-Chiu would become a mad monster without reason, with his mind full of bloodlust and killing. He looked at Ji Yufeng, who also looked at him with vigilance. Although Ji Yufeng was already at the end of his strength, Mu-Chiu had only reached the S level with the blessing of the black energy. It was not difficult to get rid of Ji Yufeng, but it would take Mu-Chiu a certain amount of time without using the power of the flame demon. Mu-Chiu's heart moved, and his bare body shook, followed by the dense figures of black-clothed ninjas. There were also some black monsters among the thousands of black-clothed ninjas, which were the abilities absorbed by the black-clothed ninjas through killing. Be careful! Many surviving humans thought that this mysterious boss that suddenly appeared was going to release some big moves. But what everyone didn't expect was that the powerful masked man in front of them let out a series of heart-shaking low laughter. Chi-chi-chi. Everyone immediately felt chilled and terrified. White Death. You can't satisfy me now. Looking forward to meeting you next time. A black fog suddenly burst out around the masked man and the black-clothed ninjas behind him. It was as if a boundless black cloud enveloped these messengers from hell, and they would return to the endless purgatory in the next moment. The sky and the earth are dark, the Eternal Night Dynasty. My name is Eternal Night, Shura. The masked man's domineering and arrogant words mixed with the power of a mighty force echoed in everyone's ears. The awakened survivors of humanity all felt as if they were struck by thunder at the same time, and their hearts trembled. When they came to their senses, the black fog in their eyes dissipated, and there was no one in front of them, only a thick smell of blood and zombie remains all over the ground. Not far away, the huge remains of the burned mutant vines were still dropping debris. It was as if reminding everyone that what had just happened was not an illusion. But without exception, the appearance of the masked man was like a nightmare, burying a layer of terrifying haze in everyone's hearts. Eternal Night Dynasty, Shura. Ji Yufeng pushed his eyes, looked up at the huge vines that had withered into debris in the distance, and murmured inexplicably. Looking at the battlefield around, discarded bullets and guns were scattered all over the ground, and the surroundings were covered with bloodstains mixed with humans and zombies. The blurred flesh and broken limbs were even more disgusting. The ruins of the collapsed club building piled up into a hill. The survivors of the Yuhei base were also in fear, and couldn't help but sigh after surviving a disaster. Before arriving at the club building, everyone thought it was just a simple encirclement and suppression mission. After all, no one thought that these heterogeneous believers could withstand the concentrated fire attacks of hundreds of powerful awakeners. They were so arrogant that they even walked directly into the enemy's lair, but they didn't expect that this group of crazy heterogeneous believers actually united with zombie heretics to fight against them. In the end, there were even human-faced demon spiders, mutant vines that were also strong in S level, weird black-clothed ninjas and masked Shura that made them daunted. These were all terrible experiences that everyone had never expected. But fortunately, all this has become a thing of the past. He is so handsome, that figure, that spirit, so manly, too manly, right? The charming Lu Qianqian stared at the direction where the masked man left, with her bare hands clasped in front of her chest. The masked demon that everyone feared was like a peerless god of war in her eyes, with worship and admiration in her eyes. The companion next to him twitched his mouth and reminded, that was the leader of the terrorist organization who almost wiped us out. Are you suffering from Stockholm Syndrome? So what? Lu Qianqian rolled her eyes at her companion, with admiration in her eyes. I would rather be eaten by the mighty Lord Shura. Nude. The whole battle was extremely tragic. Even this group of experienced search teams who have been collecting resources in the urban wasteland for many years lost most of their troops. Everyone was covered in wounds and had tired looks on their faces. Some even dragged their broken limbs to seek treatment. The few remaining awakened people with healing abilities began to treat the wounded. Lu Qingfei was also among these medical workers, but her face was obviously filled with deep melancholy and she was absent-minded in her work, completely losing her usual elegant image. Others also knew that Lu Qingfei's husband was the leader of this alien cult stronghold, but no one blamed her too much. After all, there were too many people who were changed by this cruel apocalypse. In the face of absolute interests, no one could guarantee that they could control themselves. Wei Ling stood in front of the building that had long collapsed into ruins, with a dull look on her face. Fatty came from a distance. Because of his flexible abilities, his injuries were much lighter than those of others. Boss, Mu Qiu. The fat man looked at Wei Ling's distraught look and couldn't help but comfort her. Wei Ling shook her head, tears in her eyes, making people feel pity. It's all my fault, I'm the captain. Yi Qi slowly walked to Wei Ling, with a silly expression on her face, tilted her delicate head, and said, Qiu, he is not dead. Almost as soon as Yi Qi finished speaking, the hill in front of Wei Ling, which was covered with rubble from the building, collapsed. Then came a quick cough. Cough, cough, cough. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 87. Mu Qiu. An unexpected scene happened. After the ruins collapsed again, smoke was everywhere. A figure in tattered clothes walked out of it, with a look of dust on his face, but there were no obvious injuries on his body. The one who walked out of the ruins was Mu Qiu, who was alone and being chased by the vampire Su Feng. Mu Qiu. Everyone's reaction after seeing Mu Qiu was surprising, but Wei Ling's actions were the most intense. The girl swooped into Mu Qiu's arms like a swallow in the forest, and the tears in her eyes could no longer stop flowing down. Mu Qiu spread her hands to everyone and looked at the girl in her arms with a look of surprise in her eyes. Wei Ling's reaction was indeed beyond his expectation. Autumn. Chi Chi also came over at this time. His cute face still didn't have much expression. She naturally felt that the mysterious masked man just now was played by Mu Qiu. She didn't know why Mu Qiu did this, but she would only follow Mu Qiu all the time. Mu Qiu rubbed the girl's smooth pink hair, with a gentle look in her eyes. Only then did Wei Ling realize that her actions were a bit extreme, and she quickly got out of Mu Qiu's arms, took a deep look at Mu Qiu, and then ran away with a red face like a frightened rabbit. Mu Qiu touched her nose innocently. This was the first time he saw Wei Ling look like this. It was the fat man who came to his senses first and asked hurriedly, Mu Qiu, how did you escape? There was no malicious intent in this sentence, but the situation at that time was indeed extremely dangerous. When the building was on the verge of collapse and being chased by an S-class vampire, no one thought Mu Qiu could survive. Concubine Lu Qing also looked at Mu Qiu nervously. This was also something she was concerned about. With everyone's eyes focused on her, Mu Qiu smiled faintly. Looking at the huge vine tree that had been burned into remains, he explained. Su Feng was so smart that he was deceived by his cleverness. He was the first to be devoured by the vine tree he cultivated. I took advantage of the collapse of the building to hide, and then I survived the disaster. Only then did everyone understand, but they also knew that the whole process must be extremely dangerous, something that no one could do, and they couldn't help but admire Mu Qiu in their hearts. Ji Yufeng was also watching the scene not far away, his eyes constantly lingering on Mu Qiu and Chi Chi, and an inexplicable luster flashed under his black-rimmed glasses. While Mu Qiu was talking, she noticed that there was a long and slender scar on the arm of Chi Chi next to her. This must have been a scratch from the battle with the zombie tide. Mu Qiu slowly raised the girl's jade arm with a look of pity on her face. But at this moment, the monsoon wind in the distance moved. I saw the blue laser in Ji Yufeng's hand piercing the sky, and in the next moment, a person appeared above the injured Lu Qi. No one even realized what happened, they only saw Ji Yufeng's white figure flashing past with the blue laser. There was a loud bang, and a thick smoke filled the ruins. When the black smoke dissipated, something that shocked everyone happened again. Ji Yufeng was seen hanging high in the sky, with two laser swords in his hands crossing downwards. And below Ji Yufeng, Mu Qiu, who was originally wearing a tattered black robe, was shrouded in a magnificent ice blue armor, and in his arms was a pink-haired girl who fell into coma. Mu Qiu held a ferocious sword that was 10 feet long, and it actually perfectly blocked the rapid attack from the white god of death. During the collision between the laser sword and the void sword, violent sparks flew everywhere, but it failed to force Mu Qiu to retreat even a bit. An A-level awakener actually blocked the white death's attack. How appalling is this? Mu Qiu, who had blocked Ji Yufeng's blow, slightly raised the corners of his mouth and asked with a smile on his face. "What's the matter? Lord Death. You're pretty good at it, but that vampire can't really help you." A look of emotion appeared on Ji Yufeng's face that had not changed for thousands of years, and in a flash, he appeared 100 meters away. Ji Yufeng said to the middle-aged man beside him, "Count the number of people and get out of here quickly." After saying that, he turned around and left. But there was a trace of deep doubt on Ji Yufeng's face with his back to everyone. Ji Yufeng subconsciously adjusted the frame of the mirror, which was his usual way of contemplation. He was sure that he had seen the look in his eyes somewhere before. That look with a hint of amusement in its confidence. It was not until Ji Yufeng left that everyone recovered from the eye-popping scene. Their eyes looked at Mu Qiu and the giant sword in his hand with shock and surprise. Mu Qiu didn't care about the eyes of others. A dense light blue mist surrounded her, and the ice blue armor on her body also dissipated. This is exactly the ice power he evolved after devouring the mutated vine tree. It's a pity that part of the energy in the vine tree was sucked away by the Balrog, otherwise his current ice power would definitely reach the S-level. The giant sword in his hand returned to Chi Chi's body, and Mu Qiu slowly raised the girl's delicate jade arm. There was a long and narrow wound that had scabbed over, but it destroyed the girl's overall beauty like a pearl caught in dust. Mu Qiu caressed the girl's jade arms as tender as tofu cubes, and a white halo flashed in her hands. The scene that surprised everyone happened again. The girl's scabbed wound was growing new granulations at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then it recovered perfectly without any sign of injury. Healing ability? No, that's not right. Some people who saw the scene suddenly remembered that Mu Qiu's ability was a rare ice ability, but when they thought of this healing ability again, a terrible guess came out of their mouths. Twin ability. This time, the surviving humans were completely blown up, looking at Mu Qiu as if they were looking at a peerless genius. They all knew what a twin ability meant and what amazing talent he had. If nothing unexpected happened, with the terrifying talent of a twin ability, Mu Qiu would be a guardian of the base in the future. Although they didn't know what Ji Yufeng's purpose was in testing, Mu Qiu's strength had already surprised them. The fat man, who had known about it for a long time, looked at everyone with disdain. "You are surprised by what you have seen." Lu Qinqin's eyes were also full of brilliance when she looked at Mu Qiu. She was already thinking about pulling Mu Qiu into her team no matter what. Even Ji Yufeng, who was far away, saw this scene and his eyes flashed with surprise. I don't know what he was thinking. It must be said that Miuccio surprised them since he appeared, and his behavioral talent shocked them beyond words. At dusk, the summer breeze rustled the yellow leaves. Yuhai's encirclement team had left here, leaving only the remains of the vines that were burned to slag and the ruins of the building that collapsed into a hill. Not far from the club building, there was a rusty black tower. The afterglow of the setting sun sprinkled on it, as if it had coated the rusted tower with a mysterious veil. On the top of the tower, a petite figure in a red skirt was sitting. This is a girl of the same age as Su Wen. She looks as delicate as a porcelain doll, with curved eyebrows, cherry lips, wearing a dark red Lolita skirt, and soft long hair cascading down. Her white and tender jade feet swing back and forth in the tower like a swing. The girl's red eyes, like rippling blue waves, are looking at the ruins of the building below. Suddenly, her nose frowned slightly, as if she felt a familiar breath. The corners of the girl's mouth suddenly raised, and her cherry-like mouth slowly opened, and her clove tongue licked the corners of her rosy Li sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo Xianyu. Chapter 88. Early in the morning, near a lake in the suburbs of Lannan City. Several military green tents were stationed by the lake, and the burning bonfire was still emitting residual heat. After a day's journey, the survivors of Yuhei base finally rested for a night in this relatively remote suburb. It's funny that there were hundreds of people who came here, but only a few dozen were left on the way back. Of course, this experience also gave the survivors of the search team a painful lesson. They secretly swore in their hearts that they would not accept the mission of the White Death next time, even if they risked being tricked. They had experienced all kinds of crises, and just being able to survive had exhausted their luck for the rest of their lives. It was too damn dangerous. The blue lake was rippling with ripples, and the willow trees on the lake rustled in the summer breeze. The lake reflected two figures, a man and a woman. After a day of buffering, Lu Qingfei's mood seemed to have recovered a lot, but she was still haggard and pale, and she had changed her elegant and royal sister image in the past. Opposite the great mother Lu, a figure leaned against a tall willow tree by the lake, wearing a black windbreaker. It was Miuccio. In order to maintain his image, Miuccio got another black windbreaker of the same style from somewhere and put it on. With tears in her eyes, Lu Qingfei looked at Miuccio, and after a while asked, "Did Su Feng say anything else before leaving?" This time, Lu Qingfei spent a lot of effort to beg the base, so that she could follow a search team to find her husband. Originally, she had made the worst plan, even if she only got the news of her husband's death. But Lu Qingfei never thought that her fiancé, whom she had been thinking about day and night, actually joined a crazy heterogeneous cult and became the #1 executioner in it who lost humanity. This is the fundamental reason why she was sad and grief-stricken. The husband who had completely changed his appearance overturned Lu Qingfei's cognition, and seemed to have broken some kind of barrier in her heart. Miuccio leaned against the tree trunk, and the breeze blew the broken hair on his forehead. He saw the corners of his mouth slightly raised. He told me before he died that he lost, and lost completely. Lu Qingfei lowered her eyes, and her curved eyelashes seemed to cover the sadness in her eyes. "In fact, I still admire him," Miuccio suddenly said meaningfully. "At least he has a thorough understanding of this world, and I don't think he has any faults. His only mistake was meeting me." Miuccio didn't say this. To be honest, if Miuccio hadn't intervened in this incident, Su Feng might have completely annihilated the team sent by Yuhai to clear it out. Su Feng himself is a powerful awakener who has surpassed the A level. Even if his strength is average, he has truly reached the S level. In addition to the cultivated S-class human-faced demon spider, there is also the last trump card, the mutant vine tree called Experiment No. 001. In particular, the ability of the giant vine tree is extremely restraining to Ji Yufeng. Even Ji Yufeng, who is called the White Death, can hardly contend with the three S-class terrifying beings. In addition to the zombie heretics in the entire building, Su Feng can be said to have laid a net of heaven and earth for this battle. Even if the number of people summoned by Yu Hai is doubled, there is only one way to die. Unfortunately, he met the heretic among the heretics, the salted fish Mu Qiu, who has nothing to do and stirs up trouble everywhere. Mu Qiu has no opinion on Su Feng. On the contrary, he admires Su Feng's style of doing things. But without strength, everything is empty, it's a simple truth. Hearing Mu Qiu's fair evaluation of Su Feng, Lu Qingfei's long suppressed emotions finally burst out. She suddenly raised her head, her hair was messy, her pretty face was full of resentment and anger. She looked directly at Mu Qiu and shouted, "What do you know? Su Feng, he was not like this before. It's all because of this world that he became like this, it's all." At the end, Lu Qingfei couldn't control her emotions, tears couldn't stop dripping, squatting on the ground and crying violently. With a smile on his lips, Mu Qiu walked to Lu Qingfei slowly. He bent down slightly, looked at the urban beauty with tears on her pretty face, and whispered, "I usually don't hit women." Pa! A crisp slap echoed by the lake. Lu Qingfei covered her red cheeks in disbelief, and looked at Mu Qiu with a look of horror in her pupils. Mu Qiu gently lifted Lu Qingfei's delicate chin, his eyes revealing a rare firmness. This is the path he chose himself, he can't blame anyone or anything. The two of them looked at each other, and Lu Qingfei heard Mu Qiu's playful voice in her ear. "You should be thankful that you have been well protected by the base since the end of the world, otherwise you would not be much better than Su Feng now." Mu Qiu's seriousness seemed to be only for a moment, and he looked at Lu Qingfei's exquisite body with his wanton eyes. Lu Qingfei didn't know whether she was stunned or shocked by Mu Qiu's words just now, squatting on the ground with a dull look in her eyes. The woman's rosy lower lip had been bitten unconsciously to bleed, but she was still unaware of it. The slightly messy hair matched the delicate and mature facial features, and the red lips were covered with a trace of blood, which looked like a different kind of charm. Mu Qiu looked at the seductive and mature queen in front of him and made an unexpected and surprising move. Mu Qiu's handsome face came up to her and bit her bloodshot lips tightly. In an instant, Lu Qingfei's pupils shrank and dilated, and she looked at the familiar face in front of her in disbelief. Subconsciously, she wanted to push Mu Qiu away, but for some reason, as the man came closer with an inexplicable fragrance, her mind went blank. Mu Qiu licked the bloodshot from the corners of Lu Qingfei's lips, and then the woman's bright red lips. A little cold light came first, and then the gun came out like a dragon, sticking out the tongue. Lu Qingfei's eyes widened instantly, and a feeling she had never experienced before quietly occupied her brain. After a long while, Mu Qiu pulled out his tongue that had tasted the nectar. The sticky silk thread slid from the corners of their lips, and in contrast, there was the tremor in Lu Qingfei's eyes and Mu Qiu's iconic smile. Mu Qiu stood up and said with a smile, "It's rare to see such a surprised expression on the face of the great mother Lu." After that, he turned around and waved his hand, leaving behind a chic back. Only Lu Qingfei was left standing there in a daze, not knowing what she was thinking. He was too disdainful to tell Lu Qingfei any great truths to ease her emotions. The forced kiss just now was not about love, it was just a momentary impulse on his part. The most primitive impulse of the human body is not concealed at all, this is Mu Qiu's code of conduct. No one and nothing can restrain him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 89. On the silent highway, several scrapped vehicles were parked on the side of the road, their paint peeling off due to years of wind and sun. The breeze blew, and a few yellow leaves fell on the ground stained with dried blood. Suddenly, there were loud roars of engines in the distance, and the fallen leaves and gravel on the ground trembled. I saw a row of military green Hummer jeeps speeding towards me on the road not far away. The body of the car was covered with old bloodstains and scratches, and it looked like it had experienced many dangerous life and death battles. This row of military vehicles is the search team and law enforcement team members who have finished wiping out the heterogeneous church in Lannan City and are now rushing back to Yuhei base. To put it nicely, it was a purge. In fact, it would not be an exaggeration to call it a common death. Only a few dozen people returned from a team of hundreds of people, and this was even the case when they were wrapped in horse leather. As a matter of fact, most of the high-level zombies in Lannan City were captured by the alien church, so there was less trouble on the way back. Among the dozen or so military vehicles that were speeding by, the team including Muchu was sitting here peacefully. The fat man was still driving, but this time the military vehicle was large enough to carry their entire team. The fat man was humming a tune cheerfully in the driver's seat, and it was obvious that he was in a good mood. Not only was he finally able to return to the safe base he relied on for survival, but also because he gained a lot after coming out this time. Huge risks are often accompanied by huge opportunities. Although this operation is dangerous and one will die on the spot if not careful, the benefits obtained after surviving are unimaginable by others. The resources found this time alone were more than 3 times the usual amount, not to mention the countless crystal cores collected after wiping out the zombie heretics in the club building. I said I won't come out again for a year after this operation, hee. I don't know how much merit I can get in exchange for this, my little Fang Fang. The fat man kept fantasizing about the benefits, but he became more and more eccentric, and saliva flowed from the corners of his mouth unconsciously. Muchu smiled and said, "How do I remember that merit points are distributed according to work? You didn't contribute much to this operation." But the fat man puffed up his chest and said with great ambition, "You can't say that. After all, I have contributed a lot to the team. In which action have I not taken the lead, M?" Wei Ling rolled her eyes at the fat man. "Why do I remember that you are the fastest one after every accident?" What followed was joyful laughter and curses from everyone. The atmosphere in the car was relatively good. Only Lu Qingfei and Chen Weiguo still had somewhat forced smiles on their faces. Since Muchu talked with her that day, Lu Qingfei's mood seemed to have stabilized a lot. It's just that she always avoids Muchu when she sees him. Even when she got on the bus this time, she sat alone in the last row, deliberately keeping her distance from Muchu. Chen Weiguo's low interest was entirely due to the death of Song Konghua. The only person in the team who died was Song Konghua, who was tortured and killed by Muchu for betraying the team. Song Konghua's father saved Chen Weiguo's life when the apocalypse came. As a result, this honest worker also helped Song Konghua a lot while being grateful. Chen Weiguo was not angry with Muchu. After all, Song Konghua was to blame for all this, but he still felt depressed about Song Konghua's death in front of him. In this way, the small group of people who had their own concerns followed the large army and rushed along the empty road. There were obviously a lot less zombie monsters on the road, and the occasional few were ruthlessly crushed by Humvee military vehicles as soon as they showed up. After walking for about several kilometers, through the glass in front of the car, we could finally see clearly a row of towering walls made of copper and iron in the distance. The outermost protective measure of Yuhei base is this towering wall, which is somewhat like the tall city wall in a certain giant. This wall perfectly blocks all dangers from the outside world and provides a paradise for the survivors inside the wall to rest and recuperate. The moment they saw the city wall, everyone felt relieved. Inside this wall, it cannot be said that there is no danger at all. There are still intrigues among the awakened people and intrigues competing for resources. But compared to the cold-blooded and bloodthirsty zombie heretics outside, life in the base is simply a paradise. Almost everyone's face showed a smile at this moment. Muchu looked at the Jade Sea base in front of her and raised the corners of her mouth. After eating too much meat, he occasionally wanted to have some vegetarian dishes. He missed his luxurious villa a little bit. As the military vehicle moved forward, everyone discovered that hundreds of human figures had already gathered in front of the entrance gate to the base. These human survivors split into two waves. Near the gate stood a group of idle young people with different looks, their expressions were loose and undisciplined, and they looked towards the road from time to time. The leader had short hair, a slightly stout figure, and an excited look on his face. Dozens of people behind were dressed in special forces uniforms and well equipped. They stood with guns in hand, with a firm posture and a resolute expression. On their chests was a badge with an eagle pattern. This group of people is the guard team belonging to the law enforcement team. Right in the center of these guards, a figure stood out, with eyes as sharp as eagles that seemed to be able to see through everything. And it was this person who first spotted the speeding Humvee military vehicle. Wei Linger's brother is also an S-class awakener and the captain of the guard team with the title of Eagle Nagi, Wei Ying. Among the three teams of Yuhei base, the existence of the law enforcement team is quite special. The law enforcement team has two major branches, namely the Special Law Enforcement Team led by Ji Yufeng and the Guard Team led by Wei Ying. There is no difference in the organization of the two. The biggest difference is that the Law Enforcement Team led by Wei Ying is mainly composed of ordinary people with strong bodies, while Ji Yufeng's subordinates are mostly awakened people with superpowers. One of the two is responsible for the internal order of the main base, and the other is responsible for protecting the base. They are the two trump cards in the hands of Xiao Hanyan, one of the three leaders. Just in front of the gate where the guard team is located, there is a beautiful figure. The woman was wearing a white military uniform, with a faint heroic spirit in her eyebrows and eyes, a beautiful face, but her expression gave people a cold feeling that strangers should stay away. This person is one of the three giants of Yuhei, the boss of Ji Yufeng and Wei Ying, holding the power of destruction in her hands, and is called the Iceberg Jade Girl among the strong women Xiao Hanyan. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo Xianyu. Chapter 90. When the outline of the tall wall gradually became clear, the Yuhei team that survived Lannan City was finally about to return to the safe base they dreamed of. In the car, Fatty looked at the oncoming luxurious parade and couldn't help but said in surprise, "Dear me, are they all here to welcome us back?" Miu was a little curious, "What?" The fat man sat in the driver's seat and explained, "The group of gangsters on the far side are members of the Shenlong Society among the three forces in Yuhei base. The biggest leader is Wang Daipen, one of the three talkers in Yuhei. The person standing in front and leading the group of gangsters now is Wang Daipen's younger brother, Wang Hao, a well-known pervert in Yuhei base." After saying that, the fat man pointed to the position directly in front of him. "You have seen the brother in the middle of the guards with the sharpest eyes. He is the leader of the guards, Wei Ying, and the boss's brother. As for the beautiful woman standing at the front of the guard team, her origins are quite big." The fat man looked at the beautiful figure in front of him, his throat rolled, and he swallowed. "She is one of the three leaders of Yuhei, Xiao Hanyan, known as the Bingshan Jade Girl." The fat man who has always been obsessed with sex didn't even dare to think about it when he saw the woman in military uniform with excellent appearance and figure. Having stayed at the base for 2 years, he knew all too well the terrifying methods of this iceberg beauty. More importantly, this stunning woman with both appearance and power is being pursued crazily by another talker at Yuhei base, Guardian Wang Daipen. Just thinking about the terrifying strength of that guardian is enough to deter all men who have thoughts about Xiao Hanyan. Oh! Miu looked at the woman in the distance through the car window. The slim-fitting white military uniform on her body perfectly outlines her proud figure. His long dark hair falls down to his waist like a waterfall, and his handsome eyebrows add a bit of heroism to his delicate face. I have to say that Xiao Hanyan deserves the title of Iceberg Beauty. A dozen Humvee military vehicles stopped one after another near the base wall. Dozens of awakened people in different costumes got off the military vehicles, and walking at the front was the white god of death wearing a white suit, white hair, and black-rimmed glasses, Ji Yufeng. Seeing Ji Yufeng returning to the base with a few dozen people, Xiao Hanyan's expression remained normal. The former nodded lightly, back. Wei Ying keenly noticed the abnormality. What's going on? What did you encounter? After the team of hundreds of people came back, only a few dozen were left. Ji Yufeng frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. However, Xiao Hanyan raised his hand, and his voice was cold and empty. We will talk about this later. It seemed that the Queen of the Jade Sea base did not take the operation to wipe out the heterogeneous religion at all, and just took a look at the many awakened people behind Ji Yufeng. Looking at Xiao Hanyan's indifferent eyes, these battle-experienced supernatural warriors lowered their heads unconsciously. Different from Ji Yufeng's cold and murderous eyes, Xiao Hanyan looked at everyone with a kind of trembling scrutiny, indifference, and a bit of arrogance. This feeling is as if the noble empress who towers over all living beings is looking down on the world. Only a few people could remain calm under Xiao Hanyan's scrutinizing eyes. Sister Hanyan. At this time, Wei Ling'er was like a nimble kitten, jumping out from the crowd and hugging Xiao Hanyan's slender waist. Xiao Hanyan lowered her head, looked at Wei Ling'er with fondness in her eyes, and reached out to touch Wei Ling'er's head. It's the best news that Ling'er is back safely. Wei Ying scolded from the side, Ling'er, don't be rude. Wei Ying was originally a soldier, and he valued rules the most. But Wei Ling'er stuck out her tongue playfully, not taking Wei Ying's brother seriously at all. At this moment, Wang Hao, who had been standing aside before, came over with his men and looked at Ji Yufeng with a smile on his face. Hey, Captain Ji, what are you doing out here? Are you back for such a big battle this time? The encirclement and suppression operation led by Ji Yufeng this time was quite secretive, but once more than a dozen military vehicles were mobilized, anyone with any sense could tell that this mission was not easy. Wei Ling'er, who was beside Xiao Hanyan, stood up and snorted, what are we going to do and what does it have to do with you, the lazy second-generation ancestor like you? Speaking of which, Ma Kun was Wang Hao's lackey, and Jin Xiong was Wang Daipen's right-hand man. Wei Ling'er would not believe that their team was framed by Ma Kun without Wang Hao's instructions. But after all, Ma Kun and his party died in their hands in the end. Even if Ma Kun framed them first, Wei Ling'er was not prepared to reveal the matter openly. In the order of Yuhei, killing an awakened person is a serious crime, not to mention that Jin Xiong is Wang Daipen's confidant. Once the matter is exposed, it will be tantamount to turning against Wang Daipen. When Wang Hao saw Wei Ling'er's face, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Although he is a pervert, it does not mean that he has no brains. The fact that Wei Ling'er can appear here means that the action of Ma Kun and his party has undoubtedly failed. Damn it, even Jin Xiong can't do anything to them? Wang Hao cursed secretly in his heart, but obviously he couldn't show it at this time, and a slightly obscene smile appeared on his face. Ling'er, you are right. There are many dangers out there. If you go out once, you don't know if you can come back already. I am happy to see that Captain Ji and Ling'er, the important combat forces in the base, can return safely. Hearing Wang Hao's meaningful words, Wei Ling'er said, don't worry about it, you second-generation ancestor, maybe you will die before us someday. Wei Ling'er's sarcastic words made Wang Hao's face bring a touch of anger, and the faces of many of his subordinates behind him also became unfriendly. Before the end of the world, they were hooligans who did all kinds of evil. After the outbreak of the end of the world, they were attracted by Wang Daipen's powerful strength to join the Shenlong Society. After joining the Shenlong Society, they played their bad nature to the extreme. Under Wang Daipen's reputation, even the law enforcement team did not dare to provoke them easily. If they were not afraid of Xiao Hanyan, the Ice Queen, they would have cursed and started fighting directly. Xiao Hanyan glanced at Wang Hao lightly, and the latter shuddered and quickly shifted his gaze. The aura of this sister-in-law in his mind is so strong that even Wang Hao, who is usually lawless, dares not act cute in front of Xiao Hanyan, the Ice Queen. Wei Ling'er looked up and asked, "By the way, Sister Hanyan, why are you standing at the gate of the base?" Xiao Hanyan frowned slightly, lowered her snow-white goose neck, and said in a cold voice, "This is because." Suddenly, Wei Ying looked at the distance of the road. "Here we come." Everyone in front of the gate of the base followed Xiao Hanyan's gaze and saw a flash of red in the distant sky. The deep red color became more and more intense, gradually entering everyone's eyes, like a rolling wave sweeping towards the Yuhei base.